Hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. This is a channel where I typically like to make videos about books as well as videos about homeschooling, mostly book related. Today's video is a bit of a shout out as well as some book recommendations video. So basically, there's been a number of books that I have picked up over the past year or so that I have just loved. And I really would not have known about these books if it weren't for Booktube. So my plans for this video is to share some of my most loved books and then share the person who recommended it so that you can go check out their channel. And I will obviously link all these people below, so please check them out. They're some of my favorites. The first book is The Fire by Night by Teresa Mezzanillo, and this was recommended to me by Kayla over at Reading on a Mountain. And I've been following her channel for a while, mostly for homeschooling content, but she also has like some booktube aspects to her channel as well. So if you haven't heard of her, please go check her out. This book is excellent. It is a World War II book, which I read a decent amount of World War II books, but I liked this one because it had a unique perspective. So it was told by the point of view of the nurses, and you could tell that the author did a ton of research to prepare for this book. So it's following two women who are good friends. They kind of had these high aspirations to help out with the war, and they could help out by being nurses. So they volunteered for the war, and they went to training, and then they were deployed. And the story hops between these women. So the first woman was sent to France. Her name was Jo. She was part of the medical team, and what happened was that they got cut off from kind of the main unit. There was a bombing, and so then she was kind of in charge of this makeshift in the field medical tent that didn't have enough supplies and had all these wounded soldiers, and now they're cut off, and the convoy that was going to come get them can't come get them yet. So she's kind of in charge of these men, and it's just very hard circumstances, and you're just like, I don't know if I could have done that well, half as well as she did. So that was a really interesting story. And then her friend Kay was sent to the Pacific, and her story was hard to read as well. She was part of kind of the nursing team, but then they got captured pretty much right away, I think, and she was part of a POW camp, and that was just like, the way they were treated was just horrific. And you get to watch their stories as they kind of work through what happens in their part of the war, and then what happens when they kind of are able to come through the war, which that's not a spoiler, that's on the back of the cover. But as they finish and find each other again. So it is a really good story, especially if you have any nurses in your life or you are a nurse. It is a very detailed, well-told story. So I do recommend that. It's a very good book. And the second book I want to recommend is Blue Monday by Nikki French. And this was recommended by April over at Getting Hugga With It. Y'all know I'm a big fan of her channel. I mention her a lot. But I just finished this book, just finished it a couple days ago. It was so fast-paced. Once I got hooked into the story, I couldn't put it down. I was reading it while I was cooking. Never a good idea. I definitely burned some eggs. But it was just that good. So I really, really enjoyed this book. It's about a woman, Frida Klein. She's a psychotherapist. She meets with a client, and in this case, her client is having issues with infertility. He really wants a son, and he has kind of all of these dreams and this fantasy son he has in his mind, and he shares that with her. But the problem is a boy that fits that description goes missing very soon after he describes that boy, and they are uncannily similar in appearance. And so she's uncomfortable. She goes to the police, and then she kind of gets involved in the investigation in a lot of different ways. So I really enjoyed her character. She was just quirky and kind of hard to get to know, but I really liked that. And then the inspector was good too. I think they had kind of a good dynamic between them, which I enjoyed. And then just the story was told really well. You add the psychotherapist, so you add crime plus kind of psychotherapy, so you know that you're going to get kind of an interesting, mind-bending story, and it really, really was that. So I highly recommend that. Check out this book, check out April's channel, so good. Okay, the next book I lent out already, so I don't have it to show you, but it was called These Shallow Graves by Jennifer Donnelly, and I was recommended this book by Emily over at ARG Schooling. I also talk about her quite a bit, but I love her channel, I love her curriculum. We use that for homeschooling. And so this book is really good. It's kind of a YA mystery, kind of has a little romance. It's a story about a woman whose dad seemingly committed suicide, but she doesn't believe it, so she starts kind of investigating it a little bit more, and she gets kind of pulled in. And then she ends up in some not so good parts of town. This story is set in New York in the late 1800s, and she's from the upper class. And so when she's involved in this mystery and figuring it out, it brings her to places she never would have gone. And so I really enjoyed the mystery. It was pretty fast-paced. It was very entertaining. I even enjoyed the romance, which I usually don't. I usually just like keep it a mystery. I'm fine with that. But I liked the romance. It was very, very enjoyable. So I do recommend that. Check out Emily's channel. And actually, she's the next book I'm going to recommend as well. And that book is Homegoing by Yagasi. Oh, you guys, that book is so good. There's not enough words for that book. It is a story told in multiple generations. At first I didn't think I'd like that because the point of view switches every chapter, but it starts in Africa with two sisters, and they tell the story of one that ends up staying in Africa and one that ends up being captured and put on a slave boat, which is just like, oh my gosh, her story was hard to read. And it tells stories of like on the plantation and how hard the plantation was, or even like later time around Lincoln and the Civil War and the Emancipation and all these things. Very hard to read, but very good. This author was really able to pull out the humanity in the stories, and it was excellent. It's definitely a tearjerker. It will get you, but it's really, really good. So I recommend that. And Emily, she's awesome. So the next one I just finished as well. I listened to it on audiobook. It's called Lab Girl by Hope Jaron, and I was recommended this by Emma over at A Cup of Books. So go check her channel out. She's fantastic. So this book is a nonfiction book about a woman and her path through becoming a scientist. So from her childhood to kind of where she is now, those different struggles in graduate school, and then getting your first kind of grant and being kind of poor and not publishing and all these things, to kind of where she is now in a thriving lab, and she's able to kind of do the research she's most passionate about, which happens to be plants. And I found it so interesting. The book kind of had all these little stories about plants that kind of teach you more about like the seed or how water works and all these things, that is told in a way that's not boring. It's not like a science textbook, but it was really, really interesting. And her story is just very captivating too, for kind of a nonfiction, I guess, memoir sort of style of a book. The next book I recommend is The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. I can't remember exactly who recommended this to me, but I'm going to give you two. So Lindsay at Lindsay's Little Library, or Amanda at The Curly Reader. Can't remember who it was, so I recommend them both, so I'll link them both below. But this book was really fun. It was my first Kate Morton, and I find that I really like her writing. She tends to do kind of a dual timeline mystery sort of setup. And in the case of The Forgotten Garden, it was where there's a girl who was found, I think she was 4 years old or something like that. She was on a boat that arrived in Australia, but she was by herself. And so the dock master found her and took her in and expected someone to call for her, and no one ever did. And so he ended up raising her. And then he told her the truth that she wasn't actually a part of their family. And then she goes on this quest to figure out her family. And this is definitely a book with a lot of family drama, a lot of messed up relationships, but it is really well told, and it really captivates you. You just don't know which way this story is going to go. There was a lot of kind of cliffhangers where you're like, oh, I think this is it, and you're like, oh no, that wasn't it. It was this, and so it's so good. Really, really like this book. I'm looking forward to reading more Kate Morton books because of this book. So check them out and this book. The last recommendation shout out I have is for the Winter Night Trilogy. So this is such a good set of books. I'll tell you about it in a second, but who recommended this to me was Angela over at Literature Science Alliance, as well as Emma from A Cup of Books, which I've mentioned already. Link them below. They're both great channels, and these books are so good. So I've been raving about these on my channel, so I won't spend too much time here, but there's a trilogy, the Winter Night Trilogy, about a girl named Vasya in Russia, the like 1600s, and there's some kind of magical stuff going on where she has some powers, but she comes into her powers kind of throughout the whole trilogy, and it is just very enjoyable. She's a very enjoyable character, and I just don't want to give more away than that. And I also have talked about these a lot, so I won't rehash that. But if you haven't heard about these, go see some of my other videos, because everybody should read these. They're so good. I highly recommend them. So those are my shout outs, and those are my book recommendations. thank you for watching this video. Please let me know if you have any thoughts on these books, or if you also love these booktubers, and check them out. And yeah, that is what I have for this video. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of content, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, have a wonderful day. All right, bye. Double bye.